There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things beyond our control. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. This you have the power to revoke at any moment.
Discover how ancient Stoic philosophy can help you find peace and resilience in today's chaotic world. Learn practical exercises to manage stress and overcome anxiety, and see how these timeless teachings remain relevant. Stay till the end and subscribe.
The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of things. Thus, death is nothing terrible. Otherwise, it would have appeared so to Socrates. The terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When, therefore, we are hindered, disturbed, or grieved, let us never impute it to others but to ourselves, that is, to our own views. It is the action of an uninstructed person to reproach others for his own misfortunes, of one entering upon instruction to reproach himself, and of one perfectly instructed to reproach neither others nor himself. They lose the day in expectation of the night, and the night in fear of the dawn. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he does not have, but rejoices for those he has. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you need is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient. For he that is so wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us, and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. What prevents us from saying that the happy life is to have a mind that is free, lofty, fearless, and steadfast? A mind that is placed beyond the reach of fear, beyond the reach of desire, that counts virtue the only good, baseness the only evil, and all else but a worthless mass of things, which come and go without increasing or diminishing the highest good, and neither subtracting any part from the happy life nor adding any part to it. A man thus grounded must, whether he wills or not, necessarily be attended by constant cheerfulness and a joy that is deep and issues from deep within. Since he finds delight in his own resources and desires, no joys greater than his inner joys. When someone wrongs you, ask yourself what made him do it. Once you understand his concept of good and evil, you feel sorry for him, and cease to be either amazed or angry. If his concept is similar to yours, then you will be bound to forgive him, since you would have acted as he did in similar circumstances. But if you do not share his ideas of good and evil, then you should find it easier to overlook the wrongs of someone who is confused and in a moral muddle. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. He can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by him. Circumstances don't make the man. They only reveal him to himself. Don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and all will be well with you. God has entrusted me with myself. No man is free who is not master of himself. A man should live so that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things. Know you not that a good man does nothing for appearance's sake, but for the sake of having done right? If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. All cruelty springs from weakness. Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer. You act like mortals in all that you fear and like immortals in all that you desire. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by, you take no heed.
The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only at what he does himself to make it just and holy. Begin each day by telling yourself, I shall be met with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother, not in the physical sense, but as a fellow creature, similarly endowed with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of those things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading. Neither can I be angry with my brother or fall foul of him, for he and I were born to work together like a man's 2 hands, feet, or eyelids, or the upper and lower rows of his teeth. To obstruct each other is against nature's law, and what is irritation or aversion but a form of obstruction? If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. It seems to often do more harm than good to live in resentment and disdain for the world around us. The world we find ourselves in, its past and present, its people, and the rise and fall of its cultures and practices are all the way they are. They are not the way we personally want them to be. When we resist the reality of the world around us and instead project onto it our expectations about how the world should be, we are often met with a certain level of internal resistance that can cause us to suffer. And the greater the distance between reality and our expectation, the greater the resistance. The world is what it is not what we expect it to be. Learn to accept life. Learn to love fate and all that it brings. This is the Stoic principle of Amor, Fati, to love fate. After all, fate has given us the ability to live and to experience life. Unfortunately, Amor Fati often gets confused with a passive, defeatist acceptance of the world around us, to accept the wrongs of the world and to lie down as we observe the passing of things we don't agree with or the wrongdoing we see being committed. But I believe this is a misunderstanding of the Stoic principle. Acceptance of reality does not mean to submit to it. It is simply learning the ability to see it objectively and accepting that in this moment that is the state of the world. It is the ability to look at the things around us clearly, not through the lens of our own bias and expectations. In doing so, we are better able to understand the situations around us, the reality of the situations we find ourselves in, unblinded by the lens of our own bias and expectations. We then are able to more clearly understand what is within our control and what is not, and then look to leverage that control to effect change. First in ourselves, and then, if possible, in the world around us for the better. Whenever you feel anger towards a person, think of what led them to behave in such a way. It is all too easy for us to pass judgment from our own perspective, but it is a very different thing to try and put yourself in the shoes of the wrongdoer and try to understand what hardship they have gone through, what burden they might carry, or how life has treated them leading up to the moment which you found so offensive. Most people are trying to do the best they can with what they have, and while we all are responsible for our actions, there is often a line to draw between a person's experience and their behavior. To me, one of the great ironies of life is a man's desire to find comfort, to remove all sources of hardship and suffering in favor of comfort. When applied to our core needs like food, shelter, security, and companionship, comfort and stability do make sense. But when it exceeds to every corner of our lives, comfort and the removal of all hardship seems to bring with it its own brand of hardship. Instead of putting ourselves into the unknown, expanding our comfort zone, and learning to deal with the adversity that comes with it, excessive comfort seems to risk the opposite. It erodes our resilience to hardship and can breed purposelessness, apathy, sloth, and a host of limitations that come with a shrinking comfort circle.
It seems to me that one of the lesser thought of challenges of modern life is to balance the comfort that comes when our base needs are met with the voluntary hardship that is needed to make sure that comfort doesn't soften our resolve. The ancient Stoics advocated voluntary hardship. Marcus Aurelius chose to sleep on an uncomfortable bed. Seneca chose to swim in rivers in the dead of winter. Both men were all too aware of the risks of becoming too comfortable and the benefits of adding discomfort to one's life. Day to day, we often distance ourselves from death, often thinking that it is something that happens to others or to us many, many years from now. But the truth is that death is at our shoulder every day, an ever-present fact of life. Today may very well be your last. Living with this as a reminder brings with it a deep gratitude for many of the things we take for granted, knowing that whatever it is may be one of the last few times we are able to experience it, whether that be the sound of leaves in the wind, the company of those we love, or simply the taste of good food. To the Stoics, this was the practice of Memento Mori, the practice of remembering death. The nature of life is change. From the very first shifts of the universe, the most simple of elements gathered together to produce clouds and then solid bodies, bodies that began to form the very first ingredients for life. Those ingredients formed life, the circle of birth and death, until eventually they came together in the exact configuration needed to create you and me. Like the beginning, the peak, and the crashing end of a wave, our lives are simply part of a grander cycle. We are formed, we experience, and we end. And with our end comes the opportunity for the reconfiguration of our atoms, to allow another to come and go, and to enjoy the experience of life, and so on forever. The nature of the entire universe is change, from the very big to the very small. Lives are often not made better by the accomplishments of lofty goals or the collection of expensive things, so much as they are improved by the small day-to-day changes of one's habits. The decisions to wake up a little earlier, get out of the house a little more often, go for a run, read that book that's been gathering dust, or try to be more present in the company of the things and people we love. While, of course, great achievements do contribute to it, habits built over time, not short bursts of joy, are often the paving stones to a happier life. There is a delicate balance to be had when looking to the future and the past. The future is necessary for long-term planning and preparation for events that seem likely to happen. However, look too long towards the horizon, and it's easy to let life slip by and miss the very thing you spent all that time planning and preparing for. Similarly, the past can be used as a tool to learn, but looking back to what was may also mean that you missed the life into which you've taken all the lessons of the past. The future can be used to plan and prepare, the past can be used to learn, but life only happens in the present. When I meet death, as we all must do, the time and place will be largely outside of my control. If tomorrow, then I will die tomorrow, and if a year from now or 20 years from now, then I will meet it then. It is in the very nature of a living thing to die, regardless of how much we resist it. However, for now, I am alive, so I will put to use what is within my control and decide what to do with the time that is given to me. I am not soothing you or making light of your misfortune. If fate can be overcome by tears, let us bring tears to bear upon it. Let every day be passed in mourning, every night be spent in sorrow. Instead of sleep, let your breast be torn by your own hands, your very face attacked by them, and every kind of cruelty be practiced by your grief if it will profit you. But if the dead cannot be brought back to life, however much we may beat our breasts, if destiny remains fixed and immovable forever, not to be changed by any sorrow, however great, and death does not lose its hold on anything that it has once taken away, then let our futile grief be brought to an end. Let us then steer our own course and no longer allow ourselves to be driven to leeward by the force of our misfortune. He is a sorry pilot who lets the waves wring his rudder from his grasp, who leaves the sails to fly loose and abandons the ship to the storm. But he who boldly grasps the helm and clings to it until the sea closes over him deserves praise, even though he be shipwrecked. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present.
All Hellenistic schools share a common view of wisdom, defining it primarily as a state of perfect peace of mind. From this standpoint, philosophy emerges as a remedy for human worries, anguish, and misery. For the Cynics, these issues arise from social constraints and conventions. For the Epicureans, from the pursuit of false pleasures. For the Stoics, from the pursuit of pleasure and egoistic self-interest. And for the skeptics, from false opinions. Whether or not they lay claim to the Socratic heritage, all Hellenistic philosophers agreed with Socrates that human beings suffer because they exist in ignorance. Evil, they argued, is not inherent in things, but in the value judgments people impose upon them. Therefore, the cure for human ills lies in persuading individuals to change their value judgments. In this sense, all these philosophies sought to be therapeutic. Simplicity, patience, compassion, these three are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with the way things are. Compassionate towards yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. Taoism views life as an art of being in the world, dealing with the present self. It is in this realm that God meets with nature, and yesterday parts from tomorrow. The present moment is an infinite movement, the legitimate realm of relativity. Adjustment seeks to perfect life, where the art of life lies in constant readjustment to our surroundings.
Got it? If there's anything else you'd like to adjust or add, feel free to let me know. Subscribe to stay tuned.